Right now, on the surface of every red blood cell moving through your body, there is a thin coat of sugar. You have never seen it. You will never feel it. But that sugar is the reason a stranger's blood could save your life in an emergency room, or stop your heart in under 5 minutes. For almost all of human history, nobody knew it was there. Surgeons watched patients die on the table after transfusions that should have worked, and they could not say why one person's blood healed while another person's blood turned to poison the moment it entered the vein. That coat of sugar has a name you already know. It is your blood type. And what makes a blood type strange has almost nothing to do with hospitals. It is where that letter came from in the first place, long before any hospital existed, because the letter you carry, A, or B, or AB, or O, was never designed for you. It is older than your country, older than farming, older than the human species itself. A message left behind by a war that ended thousands of years before you were born, fought by ancestors you will never meet against enemies far too small to see. You are still carrying the result of that war in your veins, and you almost certainly have no idea which side your family won. If you're enjoying this so far, hit the like button and subscribe. It genuinely helps. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I actually read them. For most people, a blood type is a piece of paperwork. It sits on a donor card or a hospital form next to your name, a letter, and sometimes a small plus or minus sign, filed somewhere between your height and your date of birth. You inherited it from your parents, the way you inherited your eye color, and unless you are giving blood or facing surgery, it rarely crosses your mind. That picture is not wrong. It is only very small. It treats your blood type as a label, when the label is the visible edge of something that took 20 million years to make and has been deciding who lives and who dies for the entire time our species has existed. To see why, you have to go back to the man who first proved blood even comes in types, and the strange thing he noticed in a Vienna laboratory at the turn of the 20th century. People had been trying to move blood from one body into another for centuries before anyone understood it. In the 1600s, physicians in England and France experimented with transfusing blood from animals, usually sheep or calves, into sick and unstable patients, with results so often fatal that several governments banned the practice outright. Even when doctors switched to human donors in the 1800s, the outcome was a coin flip nobody could read. The same procedure that revived one patient would send another into convulsions, fever, and death within the hour. And the finest medical minds of the age had no way to explain the difference. The difference was sitting in the blood the whole time, invisible, waiting for someone to mix 2 samples in a dish and watch. In the year 1900, a physician named Karl Landsteiner did something almost no one had bothered to try. He took blood from himself and from several people in his laboratory, separated the red cells from the fluid, and mixed them together in different combinations to see what would happen. Most people assumed one human's blood was interchangeable with another's. What Landsteiner saw under the microscope said otherwise. In some combinations, the red cells stayed loose and separate. In others, they clumped into thick, visible clots, sticking to each other as if they recognized one another as a threat. He was looking at a hidden system. The blood cells were carrying some kind of identity marker, and the fluid was carrying something that attacked any marker it did not recognize. By 1901, he had sorted human blood into groups, based on which samples clumped and which stayed clear. He named them A, B, and a third he first called C, which the world would soon relabel O. Within a year, 2 of his colleagues, Alfred von de Castello and Adriano Sturli, found the 4th and rarest combination, the one carrying both markers at once, which we now call AB. Medicine took decades to grasp what Landsteiner had handed it. He received the Nobel Prize in 1930, and the clumping reaction he watched in a dish is the same reaction that had been silently killing transfusion patients for hundreds of years. Mix the wrong 2 types, and the recipient's own blood attacks the incoming cells, clotting them into clumps that jam the bloodstream and can kill within minutes. So that is what your blood type does. What it actually is turns out to be smaller and stranger than most people expect. The markers Landsteiner found are not made of anything exotic. They are sugars, short chains of sugar molecules sitting on the outside of every red blood cell, and the only difference between the types is the shape of the very tip of that chain. Everyone starts with the same base structure, a sugar arrangement called the H antigen. From there, a single gene on chromosome 9 decides what happens next. One version of that gene builds a tiny molecular tool that adds one specific sugar to the tip, and you become type A. A slightly different version adds a different sugar, and you become type B. Inherit both versions, and you make both sugars, and you are type AB. Inherit a broken version, and the tool is never built, nothing is added to the tip, and the base structure is left bare. That bareness is type O, the blank original that everyone else builds on top of. This is also why mismatched blood is so dangerous. Your immune system learns early which sugar tips belong to you, and it builds antibodies against the ones that do not. A person with type A carries antibodies primed to attack B sugars on sight. A person with type O, carrying no A or B tips at all, builds antibodies against both, which is also why O blood, with nothing on its surface for a stranger's immune system to grab, can be given to almost anyone in an emergency. A label that looks like trivia is actually a precise chemical password, and your body treats the wrong password as an invasion. The letter is only half of what sits on your donor card. Next to it is a plus sign or a minus sign, and that mark comes from a second blood system discovered 4 decades after Landsteiner's first. In 1940, Landsteiner, now working with a researcher named Alexander Wiener, identified another marker on human red cells, one they had first studied using the blood of rhesus monkeys, which is where the name Rh comes from. If you have the marker, you are Rh positive. If you do not, you are Rh negative. For a transfusion, it matters for the same reason the letters do. But the Rh marker hides a second danger, one that has nothing to do with hospitals and everything to do with pregnancy. When an Rh negative mother carries an Rh positive baby, some of the baby's blood can cross into hers during birth, and her immune system, meeting the Rh marker for the first time, learns to attack it. The first child is usually unharmed. In a later pregnancy with another Rh positive baby, those antibodies can cross back across the placenta and begin destroying the child's blood before it is even born. For generations, this killed infants for reasons no one could explain. Healthy mothers losing their second and third children in a pattern that made no sense. The cause was a single mismatched marker. In the late 1960s, doctors developed an injection of anti-Rh antibodies that, given to the mother at the right moment, stops her immune system from ever learning the attack. A blood type that once killed newborns became a line on a chart and a routine injection. This is not ancient history that stopped mattering. It runs underneath modern medicine every single day. Before any transfusion, before most surgeries, a hospital will draw your blood and test it against known samples, watching for exactly the clumping Landsteiner saw, because getting it wrong can still kill a patient in the time it takes to read this sentence. Blood banks sort their entire supply by type and guard their stock of type O negative, the one that can be given to almost anyone, for the emergencies where there is no time to check. A car crash victim who arrives unconscious with no records gets type O negative by default, kept alive by a quirk of sugar chemistry that no one on Earth understood until a little over a century ago. It helps to ask where these markers came from in the first place. The A version of the gene appears to be the older one, the original working tool. B arose later, a small change to that tool that let it attach a different sugar. And type O, the bare version, did not appear just once. The gene has been broken in several different ways, at different times, in different populations, each accident landing on the same result, a tool that no longer works and a cell surface left blank. The blank slate keeps being reinvented, which is its own quiet clue that being blank is sometimes worth having. All of this still leaves the question that bothered biologists the most. If type O is the bare original, why did the others ever appear? And far more puzzling, why are they still here? Evolution is not sentimental. Traits that do nothing tend to fade, scattered and erased over enough generations until they vanish. A meaningless variation in something as important as blood should have been smoothed away long ago. Instead, all 4 types have persisted across every human population on Earth, in stable proportions for as far back as we can measure. Something has been actively keeping them around. The first real clue to what that something is did not come from human medicine at all. It came from comparing our blood to the blood of apes. In 2012, a team of geneticists led by Laure Segarel published a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences that traced the A and B markers across the primate family. They expected human blood types to be a recent human development, something that arose after our ancestors split from other apes. They found the opposite. The same A and B variations exist in gibbons, in Old World monkeys, in our closest living relatives, and the genetic fingerprints showed this was not the same trait reappearing by chance. It was the same ancient variation, inherited unbroken from a shared ancestor and held on to the entire time. The blood type you think of as yours has been passed down intact for more than 20 million years, through ancestors that were not human and would look nothing like us. Biologists call this transspecies polymorphism, a variation so old it predates the species that carry it. It means the split between A and B is older than the line between humans and chimpanzees. Old enough that, for this one stretch of the genome, a chimpanzee with type A can be a closer match to you than some of the people sitting near you right now. The label on your donor card is not really a human invention. We are only the latest species to inherit it. If this is making you think, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss one. This channel only exists because of the people who share these videos, and I don't take that lightly. A variation that survives that long, across that many species, is not surviving by accident. Geneticists have a name for the situation. They call it balancing selection, and it happens only when being different is itself an advantage, when a population is better off holding several versions of a trait than settling on one winner. And that leaves one question that cannot be avoided. What advantage could a sugar on a blood cell possibly offer that would be worth preserving for 20 million years? The pressure that explains it is the same one that has shaped the human body more than any predator, any climate, or any war we have ever fought: disease. To something trying to infect you, the surface of your cells is crowded with handholds, and the sugar tips that define your blood type are among the most useful handholds there are. Many bacteria, viruses, and parasites have evolved to grab onto specific blood group sugars in order to break into the body or hide from the immune system. The same trick shows up in illnesses you have probably already had. The winter vomiting bug, norovirus, latches onto blood group sugars lining the gut, and which strains can make you sick depends in part on the type you carry. The bacterium behind many stomach ulcers anchors itself more easily to the sugars of type O, and the moment a pathogen specializes in one blood type, the arithmetic of survival tilts toward everyone who carries a different one. Malaria shows the pattern at its starkest. The parasite behind its deadliest form, Plasmodium falciparum, has killed more human beings across history than almost anything else, and it leaves its mark all over the global map of blood types. In 2007, a researcher named Alexandra Rowe led a study, published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, into why some malaria patients survive while others die. The deadliest stage of the infection involves a process called row setting, in which infected red cells turn sticky and drag healthy cells into clumps that block blood flow to the brain and organs. Rowe's team found that this clumping happens far more easily in people with type A, B, and AB blood, and far less easily in people with type O. Type O resists the rosette. The same bare sugar that makes O the safe transfusion type also makes it harder for malaria to turn lethal. Put plainly, in a place ruled by malaria, the blood type you were born with could decide whether a childhood fever is something you recover from or something that kills you, and nothing about that is in your control. Now lay that over a map. Across much of sub-Saharan Africa, where malaria has been killing people for thousands of years, type O is unusually common, exactly what you would expect if the disease had spent millennia removing the people who carried the other types. The pattern repeats elsewhere. Type B reaches its highest frequencies across Central Asia. Type A is most common through much of Europe. And among the indigenous populations of South America, isolated for thousands of years, type O is not merely common, it is close to universal, approaching the whole population in some groups. Your blood type does not float free of geography. It is stamped with the diseases your ancestors lived among. At this point, it would be easy to walk away with a tidy conclusion. That type O is simply the lucky one, the protective original everyone should want. That conclusion is wrong, and the thing that breaks it is another disease entirely. Cholera kills by emptying the body of fluid. And when researchers studied severe cholera in the Ganges Delta, the low-lying region around modern Bangladesh, where the disease has festered for centuries, they found a cruel reversal. A study by Richard Glass and colleagues in 1985 reported that people with type O blood suffered the most violent, most life-threatening cholera infections, the kind that can drain a healthy adult in a day. The same blood type that shields you from malaria leaves you dangerously exposed to cholera. And the population of the Ganges Delta reflects it, carrying some of the lowest rates of type O found anywhere on Earth. The mirror image of the malaria map. As if two diseases had dragged the same people in opposite directions. No blood type is simply the best one. What matters is which monster was hunting your ancestors, because the bare sugar that saved one family from one plague was the open door that let the next plague in. This is also the moment to clear away the popular beliefs that have grown up around blood type, because the idea that yours secretly defines you has been pushed in directions the science never supported. In Japan, a belief called Ketsuekigata holds that blood type shapes personality, that type A people are anxious and organized, type B are free spirits, type O are confident leaders, and AB are eccentric. It has been used to match couples and, at times, to screen job applicants, and study after study searching for a real link between blood type and character has come up empty. The Western version of the same impulse is about food. In 1996, a naturopath named Peter D'Hamo published a best-selling book arguing that each blood type should follow a diet matched to its supposed ancient origins. That type O were hunters who should eat meat, type A were farmers who should eat plants, and so on down the list. It sold millions of copies, and it was tested. In 2014, the researchers Jingzhou Wang and Ahmed El-Sohemi at the University of Toronto studied more than 1,000 people, tracked their diets and their actual blood types, and checked whether matching the two produced any benefit. The people who ate the so-called type O diet did tend to be healthier, but so did everyone else who followed it, whatever their blood type. The diet worked or failed for reasons that had nothing to do with blood. The story was invented. The link between your blood and your survival has a much older source. It comes down to which infections could find a handhold on your cells, settled long before anyone was choosing a meal or a spouse. The deepest version of that story is not about any single disease. It is about the contest itself, repeated without end across generations. When one blood type becomes common in a population, the pathogens that prey on it become common too, because there are so many bodies for them to specialize in. That very commonness turns into a liability, and the people carrying a rarer type suddenly hold an edge, simply because the local diseases have not adapted to them yet. So the rare type spreads, becomes common in its turn, attracts its own specialized enemies, and the wheel comes around again. No single type can win permanently, because winning is the very thing that makes a type vulnerable. The diversity itself is the adaptation, the thing natural selection has spent 20 million years protecting. Your blood type is a single frozen frame from a chase that has been running that entire time and has never once stopped. And the deeper you look, the more of this hidden history surfaces. The ABO system is only the most famous of dozens. Human blood has been sorted into more than 40 separate group systems, layers of markers most people never hear about, and several of them tell the same story of disease writing itself into our cells. One of the clearest is the Duffy system. In 1976, a scientist named Lewis Miller and his colleagues, publishing in the New England Journal of Medicine, were studying a milder form of malaria caused by a parasite called Plasmodium vivax. They discovered that this parasite enters red blood cells by latching onto one specific protein on the cell surface, the Duffy antigen, using it as a doorway, and they found that a large share of people of West and Central African descent simply do not have that doorway. Their cells are Duffy negative, the protein is missing, and the parasite shows up holding a key to a lock that was taken out generations ago. Across much of West and Central Africa, where Vivax malaria once spread, the Duffy negative trait reaches almost the entire population. Another door shut by another plague. Another piece of ancient survival still printed in living blood. It is the same logic, written again in a different alphabet. Even the rarest quirks of blood carry the fingerprint. In 1952, doctors in the city of Bombay found a handful of patients whose blood matched no known type. People who looked like type O on a standard test, but whose blood was incompatible even with ordinary type O donors. They had inherited two broken copies of the gene that builds the original H antigen, so they could not make even the bare base structure everyone else starts from. Their blood is so unusual, it can usually only be matched with others who share the same rarity, scattered thinly across the world. It is a reminder that the system you carry is not a fixed set of 4 boxes. It is a living, branching record, still throwing up new variations, still being shaped. So come back to where this started, to the letter sitting on your donor card beside your name. It looked like trivia. It looked like paperwork. A fact about you on the level of your shoe size. It is something else entirely. That letter is the closing line of a story that began before your species existed. A verdict reached by generations of ancestors who met diseases you will never have to face, and lived long enough to hand their survival down to you. The blood moving through you right now carries the resolved arguments of those ancient fights. The door one plague could not open, the handhold another plague found and used, the bare sugar that was a shield in one part of the world and a weakness in another, depending on which century and which corner of the earth you happened to be born into. You did not choose it. You inherited it. The way you inherited the shape of your hands, from people whose names are gone, but whose verdict you are still carrying in every cell. The next time someone asks you your blood type, you will know you are not telling them a medical detail. You are telling them which plagues your family outlived. Thank you for watching until the end. If this changed how you see something, check out the videos on screen. I think they will hit the same way. And subscribe if you haven't. See you in the next one.